It's Ronit. I'm starting the live this time. Usually Alyson does it for our memoir chat, but I'm in charge this time and I'm just waiting for her to get here. There she is. Okay, so now Alyson, I have to figure out how to, oh wait, how do you do it? This is hilarious. There she is. I'm waving to you. I'm so good at multitasking, but I'm going to try. Hey!
Hello.
Girlfriend, it worked.
It worked and I'm me.
I know. Did it just happen for the first time?
Yeah, I just tested it like 20 minutes ago and it said you can't go live.
What
So
the
I
heck?
I don't know, but I'm
It's so
here.
mysterious. Should we tell everyone what we're talking about? Because it might be a little. Since we're just beginning, we may as well like spend a moment and talk about it.
Sure. Let's spend a
You want to
moment.
tell? You want to tell the story?
Yeah, so as many of you know, I do a weekly Instagram live series where someone comes and shares where I'm from, poem, like a riff on their poem by George L. Lyon. And last week I signed on to do it and said you're temporarily blocked from Instagram Live. And I have no idea why. And I haven't used any copyrighted music. I haven't done anything offensive.
Isn't
And
that weird? And I wonder if one of your guests did, but I don't know why you'd be penalized.
and nothing has been removed. It's not like I received any kind of notice. So
Yeah.
it's really perplexed. So I said to Ronit, like, I'll sign up from another account because I want to talk to Ronit, obviously. So then I just
really
went
wanted
to sign on and it let me. Anyway, it's wonderful and I'm thrilled.
You know
So
what I realize every time I start this, I don't have little earbuds in. Does my voice sound tinny and like the no? Why are you laughing at me?
because whenever we start, you always ask me about your voice.
It's
Like
because you know what it
always
is.
do. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
your voice
God.
is lovely, Roni. You have like
No, no,
three
no,
very wonderful podcasts. Your
no.
voice is without flaw.
Sometimes I listen to it after, not like I'm like, listen to my voice, but I'm let's listen to it.
Okay, this is a safe space. You can share that.
No, sometimes I listen and I hate clangy tinny
Mm.
sounds. Like I don't know if I have an issue, like an actual disorder, but I really don't
Yeah.
like that like quality of
Hmm.
sound. So I always want to check. So I hope this is better and maybe a little more intimate. So I'm really glad you're
You
back.
have a bracelet on, right?
I don't.
Oh, okay. Because once you put your headset on, I could hear some kind of like when you're
How,
gesticulating.
okay, how about now?
No, it's fine. It's when you're like making motion. It's only because you brought that up that I even said anything. It doesn't bother me. But I don't want you to listen back later and be like, what was that? Why
How
didn't you
about
say
now? How
anything?
about now?
It's good.
Okay. On a side note,
Uh-huh.
I'm sort of a stream of consciousness person. We're going to talk about memoir in a second, everyone.
Hmm.
I am looking at my window ledge and there's like two or three dead flies there just hanging out, which is gross. I think they come here to die. They see the windows because I have a lot of beautiful windows here, which I feel very fortunate about.
Hmm.
But I think they really think it's a way home and it's like Death Valley over here for
It is
them.
a way
So,
home, but not the home they intend. Yeah.
okay. So Alyson, because we didn't talk a lot prior to,
No,
we didn't kind of interact. I kind of, took the bull by the horns and was
you
like,
did. I
let's
love
talk
it.
about this.
Hmm.
And I also wondered if you might be interested in talking a little bit about your process or if it's a little too nascent for you to talk about that since you're kind of working in this
Hmm.
field right now,
Hmm.
in this arena,
Yes, and I was
you
just
know?
talking with another writer friend yesterday, someone I connected with on social media, and one of those people that you feel like you recognize, even though you don't know them. And so it
Yeah.
was fun talking with her because we have so many different intersections, and we both are working on our memoir, and we both are
Ooh.
doing memoir and essays. So it was
Ooh.
interesting talking about that because I have heard people be critical of them, obviously, because anything
Mm.
you do, people are critical of someone.
Yeah, that's true.
And that people don't like them. Like I do think, and this may be wrong, but
Is that generally speaking, people
I
don't
think some
like?
people don't like them because they find
Mm,
them more difficult to access and more difficult
mm,
to like sort of immerse themselves in. And
mm,
I think your book, the sort of beginning, middle, and end of it, and like we were referencing Melissa's book Widowish. Like
mm.
I think that those books are sort of the most easily accessible because
Well, I think
we
we
are
understand
conditioned.
story. We're conditioned to to like a beginning, middle, and end, and to see the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're conditioned by mainly like popular movies,
Mm-hmm.
books, the stories that we grow up on, and all good stories sort of have this.
Mm-hmm.
All traditionally good stories, we're trained to hear the sort of the point of where everything takes off, and
Yeah.
then what the challenges are. There's like this rising action, and then this sort of outcome. But that's, I hear what you're saying, that it's non-traditional and less prevalent to see a
Mm-hmm.
non-linear or an essay type of memoir, but they can be so fun
I
and
love them
liberating.
to read them. So it's like
Yeah.
I'm definitely interested in writing something that I would want to read. That's like
Hmm.
something I have to sort of give
For
myself.
sure.
Otherwise, I can't continue because I'm
Well,
like,
for
well, I don't want to
sure.
read this. And we were both talking about how neither one, because I think both your book and Melissa's book are so good at, and there's tons of other books, but those are the two that come to mind because I'm talking
They're
to
the
you.
only two in the world.
They're the only two, and you must
True
read them
story. Yeah.
both.
I'm kidding.
Um,
Hmm.
they have a very clear, especially Melissa's book, beginning, middle, and it is a book about grief.
Hmm.
Um, and your book is a book about your mother leaving and returning and what that looked like for you and abandonment. And like, it is a book about that. And you could hashtag abandonment,
Mm.
um, and what about when you don't want to write that book? Like, I don't want to write a book. And it's interesting because this friend has grief and I have grief. My
Mm.
brother died when I was younger. But I don't want to write a book just about that. And I don't want to
Hmm.
write a book just about sexual assault. And I don't,
Mm. Mm.
want to. So what do you do when you want to start talking about all of these things and how they intersect?
And so what are some examples of memoir and essays that have helped you a lot, or that you feel like you would like to emulate?
Well, there's so many that I love that I wouldn't even have the like confidence to say I'm trying to emulate, but I just read
Okay, that you love.
that I love. I just read In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and it was so amazing. I
Mm-hmm.
can't really I language sort of defies I can't like because I think it is like a very intellectual exercise. Have you read it, Ronit?
I'm in the process
Yeah.
of reading it. Yeah.
So
In fact,
it
it's
is
right here. I'm just going to hold it up. So there we
so
go.
on the one hand, it's very like academic, intellectual. Like she obviously has so much knowledge about the form of
Mm-hmm.
writing and all the different forms it can take to even write a book like this. But I found it very engrossing, even though
Mm.
it's
Oh, it
completely
is.
nonlinear and and plays with all different kind of genres. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I think it's a tour de force, to be honest.
And I
And
also think, like, take a look at this. I'm just in the very beginning,
yeah.
but this is a section and this is a section. So when you say a memoir and essays, I think there's like kind of two
Mm-hmm,
terms.
mm-hmm,
I think I want to kind of pick apart a little bit and ask you what you think.
mm-hmm.
There's memoir and essays, which just when I hear that, it makes me feel like it's
Longer form.
giant, chunky essays that I'm going to read one after another. And there's like an
Mm-hmm.
index, like there's a table of contents, and each one is going to be whatever, 25 pages long. But then there's like nonlinear, which can also be interchangeable. So in your opinion, like, this is a memoir and essays to you, or would you consider it more of the nonlinear?
That's a good question. I guess it is more nonlinear, but I
But
consider
who
almost,
knows?
yeah, I guess I use the term, and it's funny because I'm sure you went through this too, Ronit, as you
Mm-hmm.
begin to think about your book proposal, you start to think about comps, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a good conversation about comps, actually with Gina Frangello, because I'm taking a class with her. And even though I knew this intellectually about comps, like I still didn't really get it till we were talking about it, that you just need comps for an element of your work. Like you're not looking for a book that is your book, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
because that would be weird. Here's my book written by someone else. But that like
Right.
say I'm writing memoir and essays, I can comp a memoir and essays. Say I'm writing about grief, I can comp something about grief. Like I can create sort of like, if for those of us who are from different writing backgrounds, I can create like a pitch deck essentially of comps.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like here are different, I am using all these kind of different things. And I found that so helpful because I'm not looking for a comp of my voice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for a comp of the structure and things I might discuss within this book. And
To
I
kind
just
of
found
show that people will read this.
yeah.
People are interested in this. It's been done before, but not exactly like this, but there's an interest in this.
Yes. And then the writing itself you see in the proposal. So then you have that. You're not trying to comp your voice.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so I found that really liberating because it's like, well, I wouldn't even be trying to write a book if I felt like, oh, it's like this person's.
Of course, yeah. So now you're already talking about proposals and things like that, but you're still writing the draft, or it's...
Yeah. I mean, because it's essays, some are much further along than others, right?
Yeah.
You
for
know,
sure,
it's like,
sure.
it's very different from, I think, writing, because of course I know so many people writing books. And it's very different from someone who's writing like your book, a book that is much more holistic, where it's like, okay, so if I'm revising page 12, it may also affect page 73, which is true with a memoir and essays, but in a different way. As you and I have talked about.
I think it's a little bit different. And I have a couple of things I want to add to this. Also, are you including very short pieces or like poems too, or like, scraps of paper and things like that? So so there, which I think is really super fun. And actually, I pulled some examples. Isn't it super fun?
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, have you read Amy Krauss Rosenthal? Because she is probably the person who made me realize, oh, I can do this any way I want to do this.
No, but can you send? I mean, I would love you to put it in our.
I'm sure you know who she is, Ronit. She wrote that Modern Love before she died about. Please.
Oh yeah, yes, I do. That's all you had to say. Anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about is like. So,
because if you all have not read it, Amy Krauss Rosenthal is the woman who wrote the Modern Love that was like, please love my husband when I'm gone. And I've read it probably 3 or 4 or 5 times at this point at different points. And it makes me cry every time. And I was not aware of her memoirs. And they're incredibly inventive. And one is Encyclopedia of an Ordinary Life, where she literally is like an encyclopedia of her life. And it's just
as a whole book.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's just like, and I just love how in the introduction, I find the book so inspiring. I can never use them as comps because they're way too old, but I loved her introduction of that book because she talked about how she really grappled with not taking herself seriously as a writer because she couldn't look outside herself and find any writers who approach things the way she did. And she talks about like discovering Japanese wabi-sabi, and she's like, oh, but that's what I do, but with words, and how we can find inspiration in all different places. And I think oftentimes like we grapple, and I'm a woman, so this is my perspective, and maybe this is what happens with men too, but I do think that we also grapple more with taking ourselves seriously, especially when we're coloring outside the lines, and that is valid what we're thinking, and that it's not that I don't know what I want to do. It's that I'm still finding the way, and believing in myself that I will find the way is a process. And I think it's more of a process.
I love the freedom of a nonlinear. I haven't done it myself yet. I've just been writing short little pieces now, but I had the privilege of speaking to, there's a couple things I want to say, which is I interviewed a couple of people yesterday for season 2 of Let's Talk Memoirs. So I'm getting ramped up for that. And one of my guests is Sonia. Thank you. Is Sonia Huber, who has a new book. I need
to read her book.
Yeah. Voice First. And we were talking about how she really asserts that, there's not just one voice, there's not just one writing voice, there's many writing voices. And when you think you have to attain some voice, that once you get the authorized voice and you land on this voice, you'll then be, free to do whatever you want. You'll have arrived, and I'm paraphrasing and kind of taking my own, angle on it. But, there are many voices, and there are voices that you can use from a young you, from a scared you, from the you who is embarrassed about what you did a long time ago. So I think this idea that, I remember, for example, a long time ago when I was studying with Deborah Gwartney, I was reading a Jonathan Franzen book that she had recommended for my reading list on my master's program. And I read it, and I'll just say, I didn't love it very much.
Which one? I'm just curious.
You know which one.
The Corrections?
Maybe, no, the map.
Freedom? Oh.
The one with all the map pieces. Jeez. I'll get it.
I just stopped reading his books, to be honest, because I don't care And
Yeah,
I'm fine with
exactly.
publicly saying that.
Yeah. Okay. Here, you do something for me. I'm going to tell you what it is.
So this is time for me to, but it's, I was having a
Hold on.
conversation earlier with a
For
friend
God's
about
sake, hold on.
why I'm
Okay, I
talking.
found it. Aha.
Yes.
Oh gosh. Okay. The discomfort zone.
Oh,
Okay, but anyhow, so she had me read it, and I was
yeah.
early in my, little like jaunt into memoir and stuff, and I was like, huh. And I was also early into my feelings about, male writers sometimes, etc. But
Early
anyhow,
into your feelings. That is such a good way of expressing it because
so
there is a maturation
yeah, yeah.
process,
And
you know?
she said at one point that I had a sort of a voice a little bit reminiscent of him at times. And
Oh,
I
that's so
thought, oh,
interesting.
I was like early on in my writing. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, okay, I found my voice. I'm going to be like him. And, and I'm not, I was just like, I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's my voice. That's
Mm-hmm.
me being like that. But
Mm-hmm.
now I understand. And after talking to Sonia Huber and just like being in it for a while, that we have many voices. But the reason
Mm-hmm.
why this is coming up for me is because you said that sometimes you would worry that you're not taking yourself seriously, or who am I to try this, especially if it's maybe experimental is what you're saying, or to do all this. Is that right? Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
and I don't even think it's experimental. I think it's just saying, oh, I'm not going to tell a story like Joseph Campbell, and that's
Mm,
okay.
exactly.
You
That's
know?
exactly right. And I think that's why it's so empowering, to tell a story, your
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
B, memoir is so empowering. And then can you imagine the audacity, wink, the audacity to tell it non-linearly, or
Mm-hmm.
to tell it in essays, or to tell it however you want. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I have in front of me a couple things, and I wanted to just show you. This is Dark Room by Jill Chrisman. Do you know this
Okay.
book?
I
So this is one of
don't.
the earliest ones that I read, and I haven't read it in a long time. But anyhow, inside of this book, I'm just going to show you. Here's like little
Mm-hmm.
sections, like
Mm-hmm.
it's scraps of paper. It's not scraps of paper, but it's like journal entries, and she's got a ton of like just little sections within here.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think if there's even there are kind of some chapters, but it's very different. It's a collage. It's 100% a collage
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
memoir.
Mm-hmm.
This, I'm also interviewing Beth Kephart, which I did yesterday.
Oh,
And this is a book
yay.
that you might enjoy. I don't know if you know
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
but oh, there's the dogs.
Okay.
Let me,
Well, it
hold on.
wouldn't be a Instagram live if they didn't make an appearance.
You talk?
Okay, I'm talking. Okay, I'm talking. Um, I will say this. This is something I want to say that I was having this conversation with my friend earlier, and we're working on something together. And we were talking about how early in our writing and producing careers, because we come from film, that we were encouraged to do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like we weren't really allowed in the space. We were allowed, but we weren't welcomed. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was like, you do one thing. You're a writer, you're a director, you're a
Mm-hmm.
producer, and you write in one, like for me, it was like, you write movies, don't even write TV, like do one thing. And how, speaking of, I was early on in my like emotional maturation, I took that as word. It was like, okay, I am going to do what they tell me to do because I want this success.
Yeah.
And I now am like, forget that. I can do whatever I want.
Yes.
They're not welcoming me in the space regardless of what I do. And I am not this master of none. I am in fact passionate and curious and interested in all of these things. And this makes me better at all of them. And I
Yeah.
think that there was so much put at us of like, you have to do it this one way. And I think part of the reason I kind of rebel against a beginning, middle, and end is it's like in me where I'm like, no, 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 no. I want this to be my brain, my experience. And
Yes.
that is, and like you are a stream of consciousness speaker. And I think that's how most of us are, really. Like
Yeah.
it's all like, it's not a TED talk.
But I will say that what was interesting, and let me see if I can get her analogy right. So Beth Kephart and I were talking about this, and we were talking about memoir and essays, and so the idea, and that she said that some collections of essays are not a memoir; they're just people want to make them a memoir and essay, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not. And
Mm-hmm.
let me try to paraphrase. Essentially, all the pieces, um, they're all maybe disparate pieces, but
Mm-hmm.
when they come together, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's like a
Yeah.
puzzle that they're all part of a puzzle, and so
Yeah.
they come. The ultimate bird's eye view of the whole thing, or all together, they enhance and enrich your understanding of what the writer is trying to do, the themes they're working on, even though, similar to what you said before, not each essay has to tackle, not each
Right.
piece has to tackle the entire issues, all the issues at stake for this writer.
Yeah.
It's just that when you're done, you've kind of circled and recircled and come back again and spiraled. And that's also, I was mentioning, I was
Mm-hmm.
about Janine Allette's The Part That Burns,
Yeah.
because that's also, they're all a little bit different, and you don't necessarily know where you are in time always, and you have to kind of
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. And I think that that idea of time, and I'm wondering how you are handling time in your
Yeah.
draft, in your memoir and essays
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Um, yeah, it's interesting because I'm sort of using a framing device like that is giving me I like form, and I think that's partially because I do come from like a screenplay background, so I
Yeah,
really like that,
yeah,
like this is what it is. And so I think within that I think you're very conscious, I'm very conscious of the voice of me now and the voice of that child or that teenager or that young adult
yeah.
experiencing those things. And it was something I was talking about with this friend yesterday. It was like, for so long, I think beginning, middle, and end got in my way because I was like, well, there's never an end. You know,
Yeah,
how do you even write that?
right. Well,
And
that's I think when you come to the idea of like, well, I guess you're right. There's not an end. And are you saying in a way that a memoir and essays, tell me if this is correct, releases you what? No, no, in
just
your
said, I don't
opinion.
know.
In your opinion right now, like
Yeah.
not like definitively, does that release you from the need for the big, climactic aha
I
of
mean, it
a
might. I
yeah.
think for me, because it's within each essay, and I think it's within, because it's like this scaffolding of, I think the ultimate goal is that, like you say, or like Beth said, it is this kind of jigsaw puzzle where it
Yeah.
feels like it is a whole. Like you don't want it to feel like why is she telling me this now? I don't care.
Right,
Like
right, right.
there's something
Like certain essays don't belong in it.
right, which is
Right.
interesting as I write other essays. Which I have to share this because you have that piece in Pithead Chapel, which I loved.
Thank
And then
you.
I have this essay that I love, and I was like, I'm just going to send it to them. We'll see. And I just got accepted just right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's so great.
So thank you for sharing your essay that inspired me, because finding outlets that you feel like
Yeah.
match your voice of the piece,
Yeah.
because speaking of voice, especially with memoir and essays, your voice can be so many different things. And just because one piece matches one publication does not mean that another piece
Yeah,
will
that's a whole nother thing. I
match
guess
that
we should
publication.
maybe we should do another live on
You know?
submitting and publishing and
Yeah.
stuff to little presses, because I searched for places that wanted voices like that.
Right.
I needed, just because it may not be the right match, and that's why they always say read our work. They
Yeah.
always say read
Well,
our
yeah.
work before
And
you
I read
submit.
it and I was like, oh, like I read your piece and I just felt so like, and I do that where I will read a piece and then I like look at the publication, because
Like they take this.
yeah, I am so moved by this. I was so moved by it. And I love the Flash
Oh, I love
form.
Flash so much.
So my piece isn't Flash, but it was just like, oh, they're looking for this kind of like raw, like confessional. I feel like that's almost reductive, but like, I like that kind of stuff that feels like someone is bringing you into their circle of trust.
Very close. I too, I kind of want to read pieces where they're like, come here, come here. Or if they're not doing that, there's still maybe an intimacy, or it's a very choreographed way of hooking me. I don't know. It's a hard thing to say, but like when I'm reading for, the Citron Review and stuff, we love a whole bunch of different things, me and the team that I'm on. But, you can definitely tell when something is standing out, right away. Like you definitely can, if they've got you or not. And if it becomes something more than even just the words, right? But that's exciting. So when is your piece coming out?
I don't know. I just saw it pop up in my thing.
Oh my
we
gosh.
loved your piece. We want to, just the first. Because when
Oh
I
my
see
gosh.
publications responding,
Yeah, I know.
my first feeling is dread. someday
Exactly.
it won't be, maybe, but it still is very much like, oh, okay, here I
It
am.
always, it turns out for me that almost all the time when I'm exhausted about a piece and rejections, and then I'm just like, that's when I get, almost every time, then I get it and I'm like, oh, okay, let's do
I'm
this.
getting better at what I was just talking about, like, oh, this isn't the right home for it. And
Mm-hmm.
less about like, oh, is it my writing? Is it what I'm saying? Like, I am getting better at understanding. And this is such a journey because not everyone's your audience, and that isn't just people, that's
Yes.
also editors, agents, publications,
Yes.
like, and you really do want, like, I really actually do want someone to love it.
Yes. I mean, I feel the same way, especially so the piece that went into Hippocampus a little
Yeah,
while
that
ago,
was
and
wonderful
then
too. I'm just gonna
thank you.
fangirl out, Roni.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll take
Um,
it.
but like, that one I was like, well, of course you always have those moments where you think, is this even good? Like, am I on to
Mm-hmm.
something here or am I
Mm-hmm.
just blah, blah, blah? But I felt close to that one and I was so
Mm-hmm.
happy
I felt like
that,
that was related to your book too. Like, I felt
mhm.
like it grew. I felt like those were companion pieces.
Yeah. And one day, I hatched that in a poetry
Mm-hmm.
class I was taking, or the
Mm-hmm.
second of two. And then that one made me, one day the finally reduced you're talking about in Pinhead Chapel, I honestly wrote that in a flourish right before bed one night, and then I fixed it and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that took, what was interesting about that for me is that as a writer, it came out pretty much the way I wanted it right away. I was just, this is what I want to do. And it was so, I don't know if I told you this already, and it was so quick. I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. But then the editor and I worked on finishing a couple of pieces, couple part of it. We, there's my daughter's friend. Hi, Casey. I have to say hi. She's like at school right now, but she's decided to join our live. Oh, adorable. But anyway, but then in some revisions that my editor said, maybe we can try this. It actually took me many
Mm-hmm.
afternoons to
Isn't that
fix, and it's
interesting?
hilarious. I was like, this thing just came out of me. It's great. I love it. And then
Mm-hmm.
it took me hours upon hours to hone it, to fashion it into what I wanted it. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no shortcut. You must sacrifice something. Like it's not going to come out that way. You're not like James Joyce. I don't know how long it took James Joyce, but you know
Okay.
what I'm saying. But
Ugh.
anyway, so
Sorry.
why did I say James Joyce? Because my friend is reading Portrait of an Artist right
Oh
now,
my
and I haven't
God.
read it since high school, and I'm wondering if I should. But anyhow, I'm
I
exhausted from what
hated
I
it.
just said.
I hated it so much.
Yeah.
I
That's
hated it
that's the
so
old man
much.
thing. Oh my gosh, let's do a conversation about the old man things and the classics we're forced to read that I always wonder, are they still classics? Are they?
I don't
Um,
know. I mean, I just feel like, I mean, how long, this is a conversation that I've had with other people. How long did it take you to read a book that wasn't by a white man?
oh
Like,
God.
how old were you in
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I
school?
hear what you're saying. No, no, no. I read. No, you're absolutely right. When I hear about that, it's been so long, and I remember these old historical tales about the American Revolution we would
The
learn, or
Scarlet Letter,
yeah, or like Silas
Call of the
Marner, like
Wild.
all these things. Although, wait, George Eliot wrote
Silas
one of
Marner is a
those.
woman.
George
Yes,
Eliot.
George
It was
Eliot.
George Eliot. Never mind. I remember reading Johnny Tremain. I remember reading Island of the Blue Dolphins, which I adored, but that
Yes,
was by a man.
yes.
Um, but I remember even the George Eliot one was okay, but again, it was about like it was written by a woman, but it was about a man, and I just wanted the women. That's what I'm saying. Like I wanted to learn about the women, and so right now I was looking at my son's reading list for this English year. Amazing diversity,
Mm-hmm.
amazing
Mm-hmm.
voices, amazing different representations.
Oh, for
So
sure.
happy about that.
Now
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
different, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
not everywhere,
Well, let me ask you.
obviously.
It's 11:29. Did we say
Yes.
did we say things that were helpful? I'm not sure. I do want to mention that because we're open ended in this chat, but I did put a link to a Literary Hub article
Yeah,
on
I thought
nonlinear
that was great.
essays on a memoirs and essays. That of course is a couple years old now, so there's a whole bunch more. So I'm just going to shout it again. Janine Olet's The Part That Burns.
It was also a
Um.
wonderful writing teacher.
Oh
And
yes, is she?
like,
Yeah,
yeah, well,
and a
I
lovely
take part.
person.
Yeah, she's just wonderful.
Wife, Daughter, Self by Beth Kephart.
Yes.
Dark Room by Jill Chrisman. And this is just
Hmm.
a couple that I had laying around, and there's a ton more. And I
One
can't
of
wait to
my
read
favorite
yours,
memoir and
Alyson.
essays is What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker by Damon Young.
Okay.
Like that is really one of my, and it is a traditional memoir and essays. And,
Okay.
because it's funny and it deals with really, I mean, it's obviously deals with racism and, you know, growing up as a Black man. And, I think it's also a great study of voice. Because he has a really definitive voice, and he has a column in the Post, and like he's, you know, he's everywhere now. That
How
he was
recent?
kind of
How
everywhere,
recent
but
is
he
that
blew
book?
up. 3 years old, maybe 2 years
Okay.
old, fairly recent.
Okay.
And yeah, I was like later, I thought that was a good point that you brought up about Carmen Maria Machado and In the Dream House. I guess it probably wouldn't be considered a
But
memoir
I
and
don't know, like
essays.
maybe it is, and we don't have to define it. You know, I mean, maybe if you were
Yeah.
teaching a class on it, would you call it
Yeah.
such and such? I'm not sure. And I didn't
Yeah.
ask you because I think you're wrong or right.
Or
I
an
just did.
authority.
Yeah, like I just didn't know. You know, I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. But I love. Look at. Let me just tell you, as a reader and also as a writer, I'm like, wait a minute, I can do that. Like I'm allowed to do that and call and put this in a book and it's cohesive. Like if it's good, of course. I'm not just saying I'm gonna like just
And
write
it
something
is.
short for the heck of it. Um. Anyway, so look for that link and maybe you.
And I want to, can
Yeah.
we close with this quote from Carmen Maria Machado?
Yes, let's please do it.
Because we're kind of,
Fanning.
so I was listening to the book Exploder on In the Dream House, where I had not listened to it before, but Susan Orlean talks about a specific scene and how and I love it because it was like 60 minutes long. It's not like some long, you know, so it's wonderful. And she talks to her about how, because Carmen Maria Machado's background is fiction. That's how and she's like, well, why did you write this as a nonfiction piece? And she talked about how she wrote about this material, which it's a memoir about partner abuse. And she wrote about it in fiction. But then she wanted to write nonfiction. And she says, you know, thinking about it, it deserves the dignity of nonfiction. It deserved to be thought of as something that one might think of, not in one's, but as something that actually happened. Okay, here's a book about what actually happened. And I just thought that was so powerful.
And that's why I love nonfiction.
I physically felt it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love nonfiction. I love memoir because of that. I think fiction is beautiful, but I'll never not wonder what the author really experienced and what is really theirs, you know? Yeah. I love the honesty or the hope for honesty and self-awareness that a memoir offers, you know? So if you want to put a link to that book or a screenshot of that book, you know, to recommend in your story, What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker, is it?
Blacker.
You know? Yeah, I mean, or at least just send it to me, but I'll remember it. That's a great title.
Yeah.
So we'll be back. I hope we'll be back in October.
Yes, of course. I'll talk with you anytime.
Same.
Yeah.
And as I always say to my kids with a very long if you have any questions or requests, everyone, you know, just, you know, send us a message and feel free to watch the replay. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're watching this, you're probably watching replay.
Yeah.
Okay,
but we do appreciate that
Yeah.
Ronit's daughter's friend stopped by and others.
Yes,
she got
others.
She got the biggest shout out.
She did. She's probably gone. I'm sure they went to lunch. But or maybe she's still there. Anyway, it was great to see you. I'm glad you're back in action.
Yeah, it was so fun to see you. And
let's talk. Let's do a phone call.
Yes, okay.
We can handle our business off live.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for being here.